I think in general, it's evolved from the program that Faisal and others started with B-Launch that we talked about. I think that we saw that not only showcasing and exposing the talent to young professionals was important, but even more important is a topic that Faisal likes to talk about, which is brain drain. Here in the state, we send a lot of our best and brightest away to go to college and to do other things, and it's something that we're passionate about, providing an anchor point for high school students so that they know people when they are looking for that first internship, when they're looking maybe to start a company, or when they are off in another state and they start a family and they're looking for that great affordable place to move to, that they've got a deep connection with mentors, advisors. They see that businesses can grow here and be successful, and so we really felt like exposing that to high school students was important. And the BYP team just did an incredible effort last year to help kind of structure that, and like we said, we've evolved that now into this more formal program with IDLA. So.
And let me dovetail on what Ken just said. I think everybody has to understand in this room that this is more than just, hey, maybe you'll learn how to start a company, maybe you'll learn how, what some of the science behind startups is, because there are a lot of intangible benefits with a program like this. And some of those benefits are, you'll meet mentors who are out there doing stuff, who are actually out there starting companies. I know Mark Winkler is here and he's starting a company right now, and that's really important because now you can see what people are doing. They're coming with practical experience, and who knows, you might be able to get a job with somebody like that because you're getting a chance to meet them. You also, last year and in the prior 3 years, I mean, we've had people within the program itself, other young professionals start off companies and go to some of the other people in their group and spin off companies. Plus, we've had people who have already had established companies who brought young professionals into that program. And to what Ken is saying, when you talk about the high school kids, and we're reaching really far down now, the reason we're doing that is because we want them to see what things we have here in this town, so that, yeah, when they get into Princeton, when they get into Harvard, all these other schools, that when they look back, they can say, hey, we really like Boise because there's a lot of stuff going on. We want to come back and we want to actually work there because we don't want that brain drain. We don't want them going outside and staying outside. It's important to have them here in this community.
So first off, let me just clarify. Last year I was an advisor and a judge. I didn't really get called on much for the advisor role, but I'm excited to advise. I really enjoyed judging. And I'm also friends with...
Speakerphone.
That goes into the camera so they can hear you. Okay. Then I also am friends with Faisal and Karen and other people that have been part of the program since it started, so I've been hearing about it for a long time. So last year was my first year really seeing it firsthand because I was too busy before in the past. I'm an empty nester now, so now I have lots of time. So yes, I'm excited to get more involved with the program, and it's exciting to see the high school component, like what's happening there. And then even just as I've heard how the regular Be launched, how that's been evolving every year. I mean, it is an evolution. And so it's interesting to see just kind of, Faisal in his videos mentioned 6 months, and I'm like, no, it's only 3 months now. I think it's just more condensed and slightly smaller teams. So just trying to find those magic, how to make it work. So it keeps evolving, and it's exciting to see.
It's a startup of its own. I mean, it's the very thing you're going to find that we do in our businesses is that if you're not willing to challenge, as Eileen said a minute ago, ideas and speak up and push, one of the things that I think that being an entrepreneur, I think we all have to have just a little bit of crazy in us because we have to you have to be pretty thick-skinned to hear no a lot, to know that you've gone down the wrong path and how to pivot and correct that. So we've done that with this program. We've made mistakes. We've pivoted a few different times, but I think that probably the most, if you were to talk to any of the mentors, I think anybody that is leading a startup or mentoring you, if they aren't willing to talk with you about the mistakes they've made and the ways that they have evolved their business or changed their business because of those mistakes, then they probably aren't somebody you want mentoring you, because they're either dishonest or they haven't had enough experience. I think all of us, we could spend the entire night talking about all of our bad ideas and failures, but we won't.
Or they have bad memory.
Yes.
They don't remember.
Yeah. There's something that, maybe we're crazy and forgetful. we forget of all the mistakes that we made, and we keep moving forward. So.
I do want to speak up about that. I always have the saying where I say ignorance is bliss. I still think that me and my ex-husband, and there was a third partner, Jeff Hoyle, so it's Tim Barber, me, and Jeff Hoyle. I don't think that we would have been too scared to start our business if we actually knew all that was going to be thrown at us in that first year. And I was talking to David when we were having pizza, and Kinetics, we started the ClickBank website, and all of a sudden we get our first chargeback, and we're like, what's a chargeback? And we had no idea. We knew nothing about credit card processing, anything. But here we are, we're doing this whole online. We're supposed to be doing micropayments, but at that point, that didn't really work either. So we're just having to just change and adapt really quickly. But what's really cool is the whole chargeback thing became, we have to fight fraud real time. And we then have developed a separate subsidiary, which is Count, based on our initial business plan that we had. And I don't know, Count's really exciting too. So it's like solving problems that you never even expected can come up with a new business idea.
Oh yeah.
I think the most difficult part of you're going to be in the most difficult part of the program at the very outset, in my belief, because you have to come up with a great idea, right? And everybody knows that everybody's got an idea, but is it really a good one, right? Is it something that is in a big space? Is it something that people are going to actually? Is it something people are going to pay for, right? Are people actually? You're going to make something. Are people actually going to pay for it, or is this really a nice, cool thing, and you like to look at it and that's it? So you have to, when you walk into this, and I think this is the reason we decided to have this panel, is because when you start out here, I think you have to train your brain to some extent in how you look at problems, right? And that's what they are, they're problems. So, what does winning look like? I mean, I'm not so sure, I would couch it more, what does a great company look like, right? What does it really look like? And to get there, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I'll punt to you guys after this. But the way I look at it is there's a lot of different ways to figure out whether you've got a great idea or you think there's a great company that you can start. One way to do that is if you have a lot of experience in some area, right? If you have so much experience in some area, well, then you should really be focusing on what are some of the issues that you encounter in that particular industry. So, you read a lot of books about, hey, if you have 10,000 hours, in a particular industry or in a particular, doing a particular task, you should be really an expert in that particular task. But I think at the end of the day, if for example, with me when I started Mark Monitor, the way it happened was, I was already an attorney, and there was another attorney who got up in front of the class, this webinar that they were having, and basically said, look, we're having a problem. And the minute you hear problem, that's when you go, oh, okay, wait, I better listen really carefully. And basically what she said was, look, every time we go on to a search engine and you type in one particular trademark, another company pops up. And it really was the beginning, so now you're training your brain, right? So at that moment, for me, it was really the beginning of, wait a minute, what that person is actually saying is there are going to be a lot of trademark, copyright issues on the internet. Well, how do I come to that is because I'm an attorney, and so automatically that's where my brain goes, right? And maybe 99% of the other people in the room didn't get there. But now you're seeing how I'm now just waiting for those words, this is a problem, or we need some help with this, or whatever it may be, and then I take my experience and I attach it to it. So that's one way of doing it, right? That's one way of being able to get there. I think, to me, there's another way of getting there. And it's starting in terms of starting to think about how you come up with an idea, and that is taking yourself through a typical day, right? And so you might say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna wake up in the morning, And this is what I typically do. Okay, so what are the issues with what I do? You know, I'm a business traveler now. I have to get to the airport, so maybe I need some kind of a taxi service. Well, there's Uber and there's Lyft and all this other stuff, but that's not going to work. So then you start going through all the different things that happen during that point, from point A all the way to point B. And that's how some of these kids in the Centennial school, that's how we kind of came up with the whole bag weight issue, because you know, you get to the airport. When you get to the airport, you have a laptop. You take your laptop out, and then you put your laptop and your bag on there, and then you take your bag and you take off, and you leave your laptop, you know, on the conveyor belt. So is that a problem? Well, then now you got to do some research, right? So then the research around that is 16,000 laptops are lost every single week or every month in major airports in the United States, and that's a lot of laptops. So now you got a big problem, right? So now you've discovered you have an issue. You know people do that, and now you're in a big area, right? Because a lot of people are losing their laptops. So then you try to figure out, well, so how do you address it? How are people addressing it right now? So then you do some more research. So you can tell what's happening, right? So research is really a big component of this whole thing. Once you have figured out that there's a problem, now you go to the research side of it, right? For Mark Monitor, it was at the very inception of the internet, so there wasn't a lot of things that were going on around the copyright and trademark infringement. So you knew that you were in a space that could actually get bigger. And so to me, you have to start training your brain, right? When you come up with a winning team, you have to train your brain. You have to try to figure out what is the problem, what are some of the issues, what do I know, and then try to lead yourself through a whole, if you want to, like a whole day of where you are having issues throughout the whole day to get to a point where you have an idea that you think might be viable and you actually start a company with.
Well, and that really lends itself well to the whole ideation phase, right? It's understanding what problems do exist and what is available right now and how you solve problems. And everybody has a different process that they go through for the ideation phases.
So I would kind of play off. Faisal was a little bit modest in talking about Mark Monitor because he's got other companies. You see on the board, he's got Aptitex, and he also had First to File. And I use that as an example because we talked about domain expertise. The companies Faisal has started have been around his central domain expertise of being an attorney and looking at the world through that lens, as cracked and as warped as it might be. That's the lens, no problem. So one of the things that, the first year that I participated in Be Launched, our team came out with an idea that candidly, they took second place, they did a good job, but candidly, it's a really hard space to prove in Boise, Idaho. Even if they get full traction in Boise, Idaho, it's our belief that they'll have to go to another city to prove it in order to make it happen. And so they did a good job. They built a good prototype. They did some good research, and it's probably a good idea. But when we came back for the second year, we looked at it, and I did some research ahead of time, and I said, what could we do that actually it would be easier to do in Boise, Idaho, or in Idaho in general, in the whole state, as well as maybe long-term would be able to get funding. With my own company, it's been more difficult to get funding here locally. We don't have as much of a funding ecosystem, et cetera. So like Faisal and Eileen, I'm sure, and others, we leave the state, we go places, and we look to the Silicon Valley, we look to Salt Lake and things for funding. And that's a process. It's tough, it's arduous, and you get told no a lot, and you get a lot of interesting feedback. But I felt like that this last year that we should approach it as a Be Launch team as what can we do here in Boise? What's the local domain expertise that we have a lot of, and what could solve a big problem? And so each mentor will handle this a little bit differently. We went about it and said, let's narrow down what that looks like. And we looked at a few different things. What businesses started here and are making national impact? We actually looked at Kinetics. We looked at Albertsons. We looked at Morrison Knudsen. And we also looked at companies like Simplot and AgriBeef. And we settled on agriculture because you know, I think a lot of people look at something like agriculture and they say, well, that's Boise's past, or Idaho's past, or that's rural Idaho, et cetera. But what we don't realize is that we actually are one of the most interesting crossroads of agriculture and technology in the nation. We have some incredible innovations that are happening right here in the state and in Boise. And if you saw the level of technology that's being implemented to grow the potatoes that we are so famous for, it would blow your mind. The geolocation and watering each individual potato spore with only the water and chemicals that it needs to grow so that we conserve as much energy as we can. We thought, when I first started talking with the team about that, down this path of domain expertise, local funding, local talent, et cetera, it kind of rolled their eyes. Well, agriculture, that's our past, and et cetera. So we said, let's look at this from a bigger challenge. I sent the team away and I said, go research what impact the food system is going to have over the next 20 years. And it's pretty sobering. So if you look at the population, just kind of to understand the process we went through, we barely reached 1 billion people in 1900, okay? How many people do we have in the world now? 7 billion. So for the first however many years you want to put on things, but let's just say a few thousand with human history, whatever you want to look at from civilized history, we grew from 0 to a billion people. And then over the past 100 years, we added 6 billion more. So in startups, we're always looking for that hockey stick growth. That's crazy hockey stick growth. It's nuts. But what's even more interesting is that that is becoming more and more exponential. So in 20 years from now, by 2030, they anticipate that we will be somewhere north of 9 billion people. 2011 was the first year that we stopped creating enough food. We have a food distribution problem, right? There's places in the world that don't get enough, and there's the rest of us that get too much. But in 2011 was the first time that even if we distributed the food evenly, we wouldn't have had enough food for the entire world to eat the balanced calorie diet that we need. So what does this have to do with ideation? As our teams went back and they looked at these problems, all of a sudden what was a cool, we can do agriculture, let's look at ag tech, et cetera, becomes a cause. It becomes something that they can rally around and believe in. That what if we could build something? What if we could do something that would impact those 9 billion people? What if we could move the needle even a little bit in either the cost structure, the efficiency structure, one of these big giant problems, because that's part of what we're looking for is let's define a really big problem and then slice off a piece of it that we believe that we can address. So they looked at it a number of different ways, and we began down this path of several different ideas. They came to the conclusion that the biggest gap, and it's being affirmed, they've got a lot of really great interest around their product, was that if we could make farmers more efficient in their daily work activity and give them real-time data that could help them make effective decisions around weather, watering, fuel, labor costs, et cetera, that we could move the needle. And so they came out with a platform. It actually launches in about 2 weeks into beta, called Aggregated, spelled A-G-R-I, like agriculture. And that dashboard will give farmers incredible deep intelligence on geolocations of their individual fields, on the weather, the frost rate, the dew point, all the interesting things with weather. It'll give them incredible deep information about their particular crop, regulations about their particular crop, and information. So what started off with what's something we can do well has gone to, we needed a cause behind it to help everyone understand the big picture and all these different things we were looking at, to we're going to slice off this one thing. And if we can move the needle even a little bit with that one thing, it's pretty exciting. And that through that, and Eileen is really good at this, we then engaged other people to come in and throw rocks at their idea. The goal that we always have with building a team is to get them excited about an idea and then break it. Break it to the point of them wanting to give up and change to something else. Because if you're not willing to go through that process, if you're not willing to have people challenge that you're stupid, that you're crazy, that this is a really bad idea, then you're probably in the wrong in the wrong space. So I don't know, Eileen, we talked about this a lot last year, the competition. Talk to us about breaking ideas, maybe.
So last year, I showed up at the competition without just having the information that I read, because I didn't engage in any of the teams directly. And I was like, darn it, I wish they had called me, because I think almost all of them had, yours didn't, but all the other ones had a credit card component to it. And it has to do with credit card processing, and it's technology. And so, so I'm asking questions because I have the experience. And it's not unusual that there would be credit cards, because at the end of the day, a company does need to be profitable and needs to be able to collect money, and credit cards is a...
That's an important thing.
It is an important thing.
Yeah, money.
So, yeah, so I think just making sure that you really are thinking through all the problems that could arise. And like I said, I was a little tongue-in-cheek earlier when I said that, God, maybe it was good that we didn't know what we were getting into. And it did work out, but we were also really flexible and adaptable. But in hindsight, we probably should have looked more into understanding fraud. But at the same time, back in the 90s, it was the wild, wild west in the internet. So I don't think that we could have predicted it anyway at that point. One thing I want to speak to is both Ken and Faisal talked about like being an expert in your area and subject matter experts, and which is great. I mean, there's something to be said with that, but don't be afraid to wear different hats. I mean, so back in the 90s, I'm reading my neighbor across the street that did his MBA at Wharton. He gave me some of his business books, and I'm getting involved in accounting. His wife, who was my best friend, she was our first controller of the company. Yeah, I'm learning everything. I have a degree in chemistry, and now I'm putting together spreadsheets and doing worst case scenario, like a standard, what we hope to see, best case scenario. And you got to put together everything.
Forecast, all that.
Forecast. You can't be afraid to wear different hats and to want to maybe learn new things. And when you're working with a team of people and you're in the beginning stages and there's very few people, you all do need a lot of crossover and being able to talk about different topics. So.
And there's more to this program than just starting a company. It is about the experience, and it is about the team, and you really get to know all different facets of the business itself.
So you'll find, and I think what's really interesting is I think that a lot of the ideas that come in are usually ideas that everybody's really familiar with, right? You're familiar with this, so this is something you think is really cool and you want to throw it out there, which is totally fine. But what you might have is a mentor who will say, no, we're not going to do that. Or because we want to get to a bigger idea, we want to do it a little differently. Or you might have a mentor that says, that's great, let's put it on the board, and we'll take, we'll get to the very end, and then we'll pick the top 3 ideas, then we'll pick the one idea, and then we're going to go with that idea. So that the process is really dependent on the mentor and what their style is. And I think it's really great because there's so many different styles, and every single one of them works. And it just works differently. Towards the very end, they get it. And it's really a team thing, right? Because the team has to make a decision as to what they want to go with, right? So the mentor will take you all the way down to the very end, and at the very end, you guys might vote on something, and the mentor might be saying, well, I think this other one is it, but your team might say, this is what we really like, and this is what we want to go with. So that happens too. The mentor is there to facilitate, to guide, to give you ideas. What might happen? Some mentors might say, look, okay, now we've got this idea. I want to split everybody up into the research team, the marketing team. So 2 people would start doing some research. 2 people might be doing some, marketing stuff, all in preparation for the ultimate presentation, right? Because you're going to try to split it up the way a normal company would look like, because you have to take all that information and you suddenly have to put it into a format that the judges will like and vote for you guys to be the one they want to fund. So I think that's also really interesting, and it's a great process. And every single year, we have stunning presentations by the young professionals, because they're guided by the mentors who've been there. That's the one thing that you guys are going to get, right? You're going to get mentors who have been pitching in front of VCs, and they're going to be like, okay, this is what you do, or this is what you don't do. And suddenly you're getting firsthand guidance on how to pitch an idea to judges. And every single year, I think we hear from Bill Connors and the mayor and Jeff Sayer, that they are really impressed, really at the very end of the day, with how incredible the presentations are. And I think they're going to continue to be incredible because you have great guidance, right, from a lot of the mentors.
Well, it's more than just the ideation and the presentation. There's all this stuff in between, too. Everything from the business model canvassing, learning about accounting and the legal issues and all of the pieces and parts that come together that build that presentation. And there's a lot of the advisors and the different mentors that bring this experience to the table that help to evolve your experience from signing up as a young entrepreneur or business person that's interested in starting and forming a business, but also getting to the point of actually competing and putting a presentation together in front of esteemed judges. And there's a lot of that experience that lends itself to this program, and beyond just the ideation to all of the different steps that we take. I mean, what else can they expect from the day-to-day?
I think one of the interesting things that Faisal made me think about was that I think that a lot of people think that entrepreneurship or ideation is just a formula that we can put out there, and if you just do it this way, it'll create successful businesses. If that was the case, then venture capitalists would just would build a formula and invest in that formula. And most of them do have some sort of formula that they're investing in. But the Kauffman Foundation, which is a really great group out of Kansas City that does a lot of research on entrepreneurs and startups and things, they did some research recently where they were looking for patterns, big data patterns in which startups were successful. And big startups like Uber and Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, in the venture space, they call them unicorns, right? Because they're really super, super rare. Everybody likes to think that they're going to take their business idea, and if they just follow the path Facebook took, they'll be a multi-billion-dollar company. And the reality is that there really isn't a formula that you look at. There's not a certain type of entrepreneur that wins the day, because there's these fads. For instance, oh gosh, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college and became this great successful thing, and he did it by engaging college campuses. So for the next 5 years, everybody should drop out of college and do startups that are done like that. And no, there's a lot more to the unique things about that. Well, startups should be pushy and gregarious and outgoing and idealistic, like Steve Jobs. And then you get somebody like Bill Gates, who just wants to figure out ways to give back all the money he possibly can. And if you meet him in person, he's a extremely intelligent individual, but nobody would call him outgoing and gregarious or well-spoken. He's a pretty quiet, reserved, thoughtful guy. So I think that the interesting thing is that we don't know what exactly makes these ideas the best. We don't know exactly what makes the entrepreneurs shine when others don't. I think that the collaborative group of us that have done a lot of things, some of them successful and many of them not, have tried to come together and create the things that we know. We sat down over the past few years, and we've got this process we take you through, from ideation to collaboration to understanding business modeling and finance and all these other things, because we think those are good pieces to it. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of it is just the fire in your belly and your natural curiosity and your willingness to not take no for an answer, and really network and resource your way and scrimp your way. I'm proud to say I finally have, you talk about doing all different roles in a startup, I'm finally not the janitor anymore. A few weeks ago, we got to a point where I felt like we could have somebody clean the place. So me and my kids aren't cleaning it on the weekends anymore. So it's glamorous to be a CEO of a startup. It's you get to do a lot of exciting things, and bookkeeping and various things that you didn't think you were ever going to do. It's a lot of hard work, and a lot of things of just kind of constantly learning new things and not being afraid to fail at doing them. So.
I never once called myself an entrepreneur, ever. Like, we were just doing whatever we were doing just to stay alive back in the early days. And we were a garage startup. So I don't, like, now it's weird for me to be like, oh yeah, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. But it's not something that you call yourself when you're in the middle of doing it. So whether or not you feel an entrepreneur or not, just I think if you're willing to take on a challenge and willing to really just kind of put yourself out there and learn new stuff, don't be afraid to learn more new things. I think you're gonna have a great experience. It's a great program. I think it can be huge learning.
Oh, sure.
I think it's how you approach life. You know, I think entrepreneurs are risk takers, and so you
Calculated
can
risk.
sometimes calculated, and sometimes not so calculated. It's exactly what Eileen said. You know, you go in sometimes not really knowing what all the issues are, that if you'd known about it at the very beginning, you never would have done it. You would have been like, why am I even doing this? So it's how you approach things, right? And I think it's the same concept even if you're in a corporation. And you know, are you gonna look at some issue, some problem, and figure out how you want to resolve that problem, even in a company now? I know there are politics and whatnot, but I think an entrepreneur can help themselves, whether they're in a startup or whether they're in a company or wherever they are. You know, they're always trying. They see a problem, and then suddenly you're trying to figure out, well, gosh, why doesn't somebody do it this way? And then I think there's something else that's really interesting about entrepreneurs, and I think that is that they do stuff. They do it, right? So you don't just talk about it. They actually go and actually do it and make it happen. And I think to me, it's whether it's in a company, wherever it is, there's a combination of they see it, they try to figure out how they can fix it, or come up with another solution or whatever it is, and then they actually implement that. So there's a couple of different aspects to it when I think of an entrepreneur. That you know, you're not an entrepreneur if you just come up with an idea and that's it, and you just go to bed every night and say, I wish I'd done that, right? You have to actually have started something and make it happen. And even if you fail, it doesn't really matter, because you get up again, you try to do it again, and you learn from your previous experience as to what to do next. So
one of my favorite statements that it reminded me of is creativity without implementation and execution is irresponsibility. You know, it's not, the ideation is just the beginning of this process. Execution is what people will talk about, that they want to be more innovative, or they'll talk about that their company has this innovation program or whatever it is, and usually that means that they have a whiteboard somewhere in the building that people can bounce ideas off of. I look at, as Faisal just said, and actually Eileen just identified really well, she didn't even, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, but I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I did what seemed to come naturally, which is the risk taking and the just getting it done and figuring it out, etc. I remember one of the biggest realizations, you talk about not understanding what you're getting into. We launched our first platform at Cloud, and we're in this audience. Actually, it was the Private 75. Private 75, large companies in Idaho. We're launching our product, and we built it initially as an app. So you download an app, and then they start PowerPoint, and it pushes out to your phone, and you can interact, and you can do polling and all kinds of cool stuff. Well, we thought, oh, this is so simple. They download an app, and they're in, and they just push this button, and we're locked in. We had all these people. How do you download an app? What's my Google Play password? I've never downloaded an app from iTunes. And we are so close to these ideas and using our phones and doing all this stuff that we had failed to figure out that the average person had, the apps on their phone that where it was, when it was given to them. This is a few years ago, but still, those obvious things that you look at now and go, that seems crazy that would be a major obstacle.
I think the interesting thing about this particular program is that when we get back a lot of comments from young professionals who've been through the program, we get comments back that say, "This was a great program. Thank you so much. And now I know I never want to be an entrepreneur."
Yeah. If we teach you nothing else, that's the.
So that should tell you something right there. This might actually tell you you never want to do this, right? And that's also really beneficial because you can make the mistakes here, and there really is no risk, right? Because what are you risking other than your time? Because other people are putting money in. Everybody else is making it so that you can, you have the ability to be successful, and all you're doing is that perspiration that you're putting into the program.
Right, and there's the community that you create within their own teams. There's a lot to be said for that value in and of itself. there's a lot of that collaboration and a lot of friendships that come out of this, and you never know where that leads between the resources and the contacts and the networks and the people that you get to know through this process. It's amazing what comes out of that.